Well, the world has sadly now heard the news that Sinead O'Connor has passed away at age 56. But this is what the media does. It dilutes the act of S. Not long ago, I made a video about S, and a message in that video I know personally has helped save lives. But the platforms that I posted it on deleted it entirely, even in the background. So on YouTube Studio, it wasn't just removed from public access, it was completely erased. Why? Because despite the progress we've made in many ways, we're still afraid that S is an undesirable word, that there is an enduring fear about talking about it in case it promotes more acts of it. And I can assure you that that is just nonsense. It's simply not true. It's not what the research tells us, and it's not what my experience shows me. If we don't start bringing S out of the darkness, then many more people will inevitably suffer in silence, feeling like they are in some ways abnormal, dysfunctional, broken, not strong enough, mentally unwell, or just completely without hope. It doesn't matter who you are, how much fame or money that you have, how great your job is, how successful you are, how loved you might be. When you are in this place of utmost darkness, it's impossible to see any light. With Sinead, we know she had a very troubling and traumatic childhood. She then experienced complicated grief when her mother passed. She was still a teenager. Complicated grief is a very difficult thing to deal with. There's this paradox of emotional experience. The person that you were meant to love, but you hated and in some ways still loved, has passed. There's no opportunity to process this or to finalize this or find resolution. So she would have gone through a lot when her mother passed. And then with her own complicated childhood in the background, there was a lot for Sinead to endure. I think the turning point for her was when she lost her own son, and nothing else really mattered after that point. She even made a few Twitter posts, and I'll talk more about that in a moment, but these were cries for help before she made the ultimate decision to engage in the act of S. But whenever she attempted to speak out about injustice or about the sadness of this world, her own world, she was either punished or felt compelled to withdraw her comments and in some instances apologize for them. When Sinead ripped up a picture of the Pope on live TV, a good 10 years before the social media storm emerged, she almost certainly sealed her fate. Good girls and certainly good media personalities toe the line, and they speak only against the socially sanctioned topics of controversy, and of course, only on the side that the elite have deemed correct. In an interview for the New York Times in 2021, Sinead said, "The media was making me out to be crazy because I wasn't acting like a pop star was supposed to act." She also said, "It seems to me that being a pop star is almost like being in a type of prison. You have to be a good girl." But it wasn't about being good to Sinead. It was about justice. It was about standing up for what was right. And she paid a heavy price for that. Sinead grew up with a mother who abused her until she ran away at age 13. Sinead has talked about how she saw her mother trying to destroy her womb with physical beatings, being punched and kicked in the abdomen every other day. When you grow up with that kind of trauma, you change as a person. And in some ways, you will never be who you might have been without that experience. And this becomes a negative or a positive legacy. In Sinead's own words, child abuse is an identity crisis and fame is an identity crisis. So she went straight from one identity crisis to another. And I think that sums it up perfectly. Sinead was later diagnosed with PTSD due to her childhood and ongoing traumas. She was also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is a diagnosis in psychiatry which kind of catches patients that are seen as complicated or difficult, the too hard basket. It's a diagnosis based on patterns of instability in relationships, self-image, and emotion dysregulation. And to me, it is a very unhelpful diagnostic label. The only thing that borderline personality disorder tells me clinically is that the person has probably had a really crappy life and a miserable childhood. But what it tells the patient is that they are probably unwell, that they are dysfunctional, and that they have a problematic personality. Well, personality is identity. So essentially, you're telling a patient that they are the problem. A Great message for someone who already is struggling with self-esteem and identity issues. Oh, and then there is no pharmacological treatment for borderline personality disorder, just dialectical behavioral therapy, where you will be told to just live in the moment, develop healthy ways to cope with stress, regulate those dysfunctional emotions, and improve your relationships with others. So very circular and not very helpful. So BPD, borderline personality disorder, is something I really hesitate to apply as a diagnostic label. See, Sinead didn't have any peace or security in life. She didn't have it from her mother. Her mother actually made her repeat over and over, "I am nothing." Otherwise, her mother would beat her. She didn't have security and peace in relationships. She was labelled as crazy after standing up for human rights violations. She was abandoned by family, by the music community. She withdrew and she found solace in her newfound faith. Then she lost her son and she became convinced that this life is without security and peace. And she was right. She made some desperate tweets at the time, which have now all been removed, and she then later apologized for those. She sought help, but in her own mind, the only peace and security that she could find would not be found here in this life. So here we are now, remembering Sinead's passion, her courage, her talent, and her audacious spirit. But Sinead and those like her with unhelpful labels such as BPD and complex PTSD are products of their environments. You can't separate the individual from their environment any more than you can separate the mind from the body. They are inseparable, and it is bidirectional, and one impacts the other. Mental health professionals need to stop asking what is wrong with you and start asking what happened to you. We need to stop pathologizing and stop propagating this myth of normal. We need to stand up against the industry that wants to label and pathologize and medicate experience. And we need to have the courage to stand up for what is right rather than what is popular. And we need to start talking about S and stop acting like it's a feared word. In an interview that Sinead did with Dr. Phil back in 2017, she admitted that she had been suffering with S thoughts for the past 2 years, but was determined on staying alive. She said, "I am only one of millions and millions and millions of people who are just like me." And she stayed alive for a long time after that. But the loss of her son in early 2022, I guess, was a pain unlike anything she had ever known before, and a pain that she had determined she could not live with. We don't know the details of her passing yet, but if you are one of those millions and millions of people who are desperately striving to stay alive, like Sinead was, then I urge you to reach out to someone, to anyone, and ask for help. It's not easy, but it is a choice. Ultimately, S is an individual's choice, and we can never truly know what someone else lives with or what has happened to them or what sort of pain they're experiencing in their lives. But from my years and years of working in this field, I assure you, most people who choose S don't actually want to leave, they just don't know how to live. And that is the bridge between here and there, between life and death, is knowing how to live with the pain, with the history, with the suffering, with the trauma, with the experience of your life. It is not easy, but it is a choice. And if you have seen psychiatrists or psychologists only to be further burdened by labels such as a flawed personality, BPD, then find another who values your story more than a diagnostic label. Find someone who will empower you and validate your experience, because there is great value, there is great healing in being heard and being understood. Sinead could not find the security, the validation, and the peace she deserved in this life. I hope it's hers now. Rest in peace, Sinead.
This is to mother you, to comfort you and get you through is to be with you, to hold you and